What's up, guys? Brian Ellwood. Today I want to tell you a story about Henry Ford, the guy who started Ford Motor Company. So in 1916, the Chicago Tribune wrote an article calling Henry an ignorant idealist. And Henry sued the paper for slandering his name. And then he ends up having to go to court and literally try to prove that he is not ignorant, because that's sort of what the point of contention was. And so there was lawyers from the newspaper that were badgering him with questions in the courtroom and asking him all these different historical facts and things, some of the stuff he didn't know. And then they were pointing at him and saying, look, he is indeed ignorant. He doesn't know what happened in, when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 or some stupid stuff like that, right? And so Henry's response to the lawyers from the newspaper was classic. And I don't know it verbatim, but what he basically said was, listen, I have a row of push buttons on my desk, and anytime I have a need for a question to be answered, like the questions you guys are asking me, I can just push a button and someone comes into my office who knows the answer to that question. So why would I waste my time filling up my brain with all these just worthless little pieces of knowledge when I just can simply push a button and get the answer to any question that I could ever have, right? And he really kind of stumped the lawyers and the court when he said that. And that moment has kind of been like a thing that people bring up over and over now, because it teaches a really important lesson. When I first got into real estate, my mentor, he was flipping houses, building new houses and stuff. And I remember driving around with him as he was kind of teaching me how to do things. And he would run into problems and he'd be like, oh crap, we have to have a new building plan for this house we're going to build. And it's on a certain slope, so the blueprints have to be drawn differently. And he would simply just pick up his phone and call his architect or whatever, or call his engineer and ask them those questions. And then he would run into some other problem having to do with like the landscaping or the HVAC, and he would call that person. And so I observed him and I realized that the reason he was so successful was because he followed that Henry Ford, approach of, instead of trying to know everything yourself, you develop a team of people, a team of experts who know way more than you, and you just tap them when you have a question. So when I teach people to invest in real estate, a lot of people are like, well, Brian, how do you know if it's a good deal or not? How do you know how much the repairs are going to be? How do you know how much it's going to rent for? All this stuff. How do you know, how much it's going to be worth when it's fixed up? And I always say, you don't know, right? That you have to ask other people. Like, I have a couple of options. I could either become a home inspector and go get certified and do it for 10 years and get really good at it and then go do my own inspections, or I can just pay somebody $200 or $300 to do the inspection for me and tap into their knowledge base. And then I am basically brought up to their level of being, just having the information, right? Same thing with like a contractor for getting an estimate. Instead of trying to become a rehabbing expert, I just leverage the knowledge of someone who's been doing that for years. I would take me years and years, decades, right, to understand things on the level that these people do. So it's much better to just partner with them. Property managers, you find a good property manager who's been managing properties for dozens of years in your neighborhood. They're going to know exactly what that thing will rent for, exactly how much you should fix it up in order to bring that rent, and like how to find the best tenants and all that stuff. So why would I try to figure all that stuff out on my own when there's someone there that's been doing it for years, right? And they've already figured out the answer, right? So instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I partner up with those people, and it just brings me up to their level because I get to converse with them and figure out the answers immediately. Okay. So the key, when you go back to the Henry Ford story, Henry Ford built a team of experts around him, and then all of those experts helped to level him up to where he looked really smart, but he was really just, propped up in a lot of ways by the expertise of all of his team. And he was the leader. And that's what I want you guys to be in your businesses, right? Don't try to become an expert at all things. Ask who can do this for me, who knows the thing better than I do, and make a phone call, build your team. Building your team is the very next step that you do behind picking your market. You need to pick a good market where all the numbers make sense from an economy and a rent to price ratio perspective. And then you move on to building your team. The reason that's second is because your team is your knowledge. That's your leverage. When you go into a market, you don't know which zip codes to focus on, what's a good deal, what neighborhoods to stay out of, how much are the repairs going to be, what's the rent going to be, is this a good deal, like what's the ARV, all that stuff is your team's job to figure out, not yours. Okay. So when you make that mental shift, everything changes. Hope this video has been helpful, guys. If you guys would like to learn more about my group coaching program, where I coach a group twice a week for less than the cost of a gym membership, go to myfirst12houses.com. Check that out. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.